The number one thing that's destroying your liver is actually not alcohol. And yes, alcohol-related liver disease affects 16 million Americans every single year. And that's a big number. But what if I were to tell you something else? Something that people think is harmless that's currently causing chronic liver disease in 100 million people. Today, we're going to show you what that is. In fact, if you can guess what that is, please comment down below. And then I want to also cover the number one cause of acute liver failure, which is Tylenol. I'm going to get into that as well. But mainly I'm going to focus on this one right here, which is a huge problem, and a lot of people are not aware of it. So let's first give you a little background on your liver. Your liver has over 500 functions. It's not a place where you store toxins. It takes a toxin or a poison and it turns it into something harmless through a whole series of actions. One of the most powerful compounds in the liver is called glutathione. Glutathione is your protection, your bodyguard. You also have another system of fat export. So this whole system keeps the fat out of the liver, but everything you eat, everything you breathe, everything you put on your skin eventually ends up in your blood and your liver. I mean, even the lotion that you put on your hand, you know, in about a few minutes, it's like gone. Where do you think it goes? It gets absorbed, it's right in your bloodstream, ends up in the liver. So glutathione is one of the key things that helps neutralize some of these poisons. But the key is having enough glutathione. I'm going to show you how to actually increase it if you're deficient. The fat export system is a very interesting system that will shuttle out this fat out of your liver and into the intestines. I'm also going to show you how to enhance that system as well, because having a fatty liver is not a good thing. So what is it that's causing chronic liver disease in 100 million Americans? Fructose. Now, before you say, well, that's just fruit sugar, it can't be that bad. Let me give you a little history. 2,000 years ago, the ancient Romans figured out how to make what's called foie gras, a very expensive delicacy of a diseased fatty liver. And how did they make it? Well, they force-fed geese dried dates. The way they do it now is they force-feed with corn and things like that. But back 2,000 years ago, they used dates, which happens to be the richest natural source of fructose. So they use fructose to manufacture fatty liver disease on purpose. And that's exactly what we're doing with our livers right now. But not with dates, with high fructose corn syrup in soda. It's actually in cereals, it's in granola bars, it's in yogurt, it's in ketchup, it's in bread, it's in thousands of processed foods. The fastest way to make a fatty liver. So let's talk about fructose and what's so unique about it and why it's different than glucose. Unlike glucose, which by the way, all of your cells can process, fructose can only be metabolized by your liver. And when fructose hits the liver, it does two devastating things at the exact same time. Number one, it activates fat accumulation. It's a fancy way of saying fructose is basically a fat-making machine in your liver. And number two, it will block the fat burning, okay? In other words, it turns off any ability to get rid of that fat. So you're making all this fat, but you can't get rid of the fat at the same time. That's how the liver becomes fatty. And the research on fructose shows that it is as dangerous as alcohol to your liver. But the difference is when someone hands you a Coca-Cola or a soda with high fructose corn syrup, you're not in your mind comparing what that's going to be doing to your liver. That's going to be very similar to alcohol. But biochemically, the body doesn't know the difference. And I know some people are going to say, well, fructose is in fruit and fruit is natural. That doesn't cause a fatty liver. Well, I'm talking about liquid candy. I'm not talking about the fructose in fruit that has the fiber that breaks down very, very slowly. I'm talking about high fructose corn syrup in such large amounts that it overwhelms the liver. Now, what's really bad is 5 to 10% of children now have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And in obese children, 50% of them have a fatty liver. We're seeing children nowadays as young as 2 years old with fatty liver disease. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is now the most common cause of liver transplants in younger adults under 50 years old. It surpassed hepatitis C. These are not alcoholics. They're young people who are consuming too much fructose. Now, I want to talk about acetaminophen, Tylenol. There's something you need to know about this. Fructose is a slow, silent chronic killer, but Tylenol is a very fast one. Tylenol is the #1 cause of acute liver failure in the US. Fructose is the most common cause of chronic liver disease. So this is slow, this is fast, because you can end up in the ICU in literally 72 hours. Now, of course, in small doses, it's not that damaging, but it's very easy to actually consume a lot of this. But before I get into that, let me just explain what this does to your liver. It depletes glutathione. Now you cannot neutralize toxins. And Tylenol is hiding in literally 600 different medications. So let's say, for example, someone has a bad cold, and so they take 2 extra strength Tylenol for a headache. So that's 1,000 milligrams right there, okay? Then before bed, they take NyQuil, which also contains acetaminophen. And then they do this every 6 hours. By morning, you've already exceeded the safe limit. And you probably had no idea that you doubled the dose from the same drug. Or your doctor might prescribe Vicodin or Percocet for back pain. And a lot of people don't realize that both of them already contain acetaminophen. And then unknowingly, you take Tylenol on top of that because the pain is so bad. Nearly half of all serious acetaminophen overdoses come from prescription combinations. And here's the worst part. Acetaminophen has a ceiling for pain, okay? So in other words, taking more doesn't reduce your pain anymore, but your liver damage goes through the roof. The early sign of liver damage is nausea, fatigue, vomiting, which also, by the way, looks like the flu. So people might not know that, and then they take more Tylenol when they're actually trying to get rid of the symptoms from too much Tylenol. 500 people die every year from a Tylenol overdose, but 56,000 people end up in the emergency room. What's the good news? The good news is the liver is one of the only organs that has this amazing ability to regenerate, and it can heal. It can bounce back. The first thing you need to do is stop consuming high fructose corn syrup. Stop consuming sugar in general, because even half of sugar is fructose. If you have children, only give them the fructose in fruit, the whole fruit, not the juice. Fruit juice is liquid candy, okay, with a lot of fructose, even if it doesn't have high fructose corn syrup in it. Choline is a really good remedy. And by the way, guess what has the most choline? Other than liver, which a lot of people don't like, egg yolks have choline. Choline greatly helps the liver in transporting fat out of the liver. It prevents a fatty liver, and you can reverse a fatty liver by taking choline. The other remedy is something called NAC. This is something that emergency room doctors will use if people have overdosed with Tylenol. Why? What does it do? It increases glutathione. It puts back that bodyguard that was depleted. In fact, if I were you, if I had to take Tylenol for anything, I would get some NAC and I would take it at the same time. That way you can protect your liver. So NAC is not glutathione, but it actually gives the raw material for the liver to make glutathione. Another way that you can get glutathione is by consuming cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, Brussels sprouts. Also, the trace mineral selenium can also help make glutathione as well.